Hi, Bob. I just wanted to call and say I loved your work. Of course, we'll get started right away. Great chat, great chat. After all, we need to find out all the secrets behind Bob's 1972 masterpiece of a sitcom, The Bob Newhart Show. Who didn't love to sit down with Dr. Hartley, a psychologist with a special way of doing things, who could have used an appointment himself, with all the antics his friends and family pulled? So, just how did Bob break the sitcom mold? How much of a say did Bob Newhart have in the Bob Newhart Show? We'll find out all this and more. So if you enjoy our show about a show, give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to avoid missing your next appointment. But without further ado, let's go to work. A stand-up start. At the heart of the Bob Newhart Show's success was, of course, Bob himself. It was he that drove show creators David Davis and Lorenzo Music to conceive the premise.
Get me off this lousy boat!
They had written a scene for him for Love American Style, but the comedian was not available. So they wrote a script highlighting Newhart for The Mary Tyler Moore Show. But again, he wasn't available. Finally, MTM Enterprises asked Davis and Lorenzo to write a fresh pilot for a new sitcom. And with all the freedom, the two writers knew exactly what they wanted: a show for Bob Newhart. There were a few hang-ups. By this point, Newhart was a very established stand-up comedian, and the heart of his brand of jokes was finding humor in the reality, and then reacting to it.
You haven't seen United 209 up there anywhere, have you?
But being a TV actor ate up valuable time in his stand-up game. But stand-up comedy was also a very nomadic lifestyle, and Bob enjoyed the idea of going home to his family every night. So they got their actor, next came the premise, bouncing around ideas like an army soldier or a school principal. But in the end, it was Newhart's stand-up background that made the decision, with Bob saying, quote, "I'm a listener, and I react to what people say. We need a profession that suited that." First, they went with a psychiatrist, but Newhart himself insisted on a psychologist instead. The difference being Newhart didn't want to make fun of people with mental problems. It was supposed to be relatable, making us think we could use a sit-down with Dr. Bob. Though, even then, they couldn't quite say psychologist, since mental health was still a new thing for TV to tackle. So the network used personal counselor instead. A family matter. When he read the premise, Newhart was agreeable, except he did not want his character to have kids, placing him into the goofy dad archetype, and making the show just another family sitcom. So, no kids, check, making Bob and Emily TV's first dink family, meaning dual income, no kids. Co-star Suzanne Pleshette was equally passionate about the topic of babies, but in a different way. While filming the pilot, Pleshette was pregnant. But sadly, she had a miscarriage, and she explained to producers that if she did get pregnant again, that baby would be born. Ultimately, Pleshette did not get pregnant, but the line in the sand was drawn and respected. The show ended up exploring this scenario in a purely what-if format in the 1977 episode You're Having My Hartley, but it was all a dream. Hey, that sounds familiar. Cast members assemble. With Bob being the straight man, the show needed a strong cast, and boy did they get one with plenty of good luck. Show creator Lorenzo was watching Carson one night, and who was on it? Special guest Suzanne Pleshette. He watched the two play off each other with great chemistry, and they had the back and forth that the Newhart Show was aiming for. And luckily, Suzanne was all for it, looking for work that kept her home during her current pregnancy. Bill Daly, who played neighbor Howard, had been in the pilot for a Mary Tyler Moore spinoff, but when it didn't go anywhere, his schedule was free. As for Peter Bonnertz, aka Dr. Jerry, he was the producer's first and only choice after seeing him in the improvisational 1967 film Funny Man. And for the mailman, who didn't appear much, he was not hard to get a hold of, as he was played by Bill Quinn, Bob Newhart's father-in-law. Phoning it in. With a comedy powerhouse like Newhart, the show practically wrote itself. The general formula, as described by writer-producer Michael Zinberg, put Bob in a situation and watch him react.
Bob, I'm gonna do it. Bob, you are terrific.
Basically, get as close to his stand-up routines as possible. One of Bob's most famous routines was his one-sided phone conversations. And that's why throughout the first 2 seasons, the episodes began with Bob answering the phone. So it's only fitting that when Newhart joined an interview about the show's 42nd anniversary, he did so on the phone. Hi, Bob. Bob reacts. Scripts can only dictate so much. What's the balance between telling the actor exactly what to do and giving them some freedom? Turns out the Bob Newhart Show's writers had it pretty easy by constantly writing the mystical phrase, quote, Bob reacts. And like a genie, Bob Newhart made something funny happen.
I'm gonna take the afternoon off.
Speaking of cues, the most common phrase in the show, or maybe any show, hi Bob. In total, it's said 256 times. The phrase became such a running gag that apparently 1970s college kids turned it into a drinking game.
It's unfortunately a drinking game that is played at college campuses.
Hi Bob, drink. Credit the credits. Even the opening of the Bob Newhart Show broke the mold by being pretty unremarkable, really. The landscape shots look nice, but most 1970s intros desired to be a whole production. Writer Dave Davis wanted it to be a guy going home from work. Just relatable. It gave producers a lot of freedom, not having to commit to a theme or a big spectacle. It also meant getting right to the show, and for a few episodes of season 6, the show just started, and the credits rolled while the scene began. And in the 70s, this was pretty unheard of, but I'm sure you'll notice many sitcoms today follow that suit. But it all began with Bob. Location, location, location. More episodes meant more sweeping shots of Chicago, and the location scouts scoured the city to find the prettiest places. All this set to a theme written by show creator Lorenzo and his wife Henrietta, the goal being sound like the band called Chicago. Though a sharp-eyed Chicago resident might notice his commute home is a bit weird. He goes in opposite directions on some bridges. Then when he gets off the train, he's 55 blocks past his home. What's up with that, Doc? Bob's office had been the Bay Federal Bank building, located on Michigan Avenue, if you ever needed an appointment with the doc. Newhart. Showrunners could never quite shake that baby fever. They kept trying to convince Bob to let his character have a kid. And finally, season 6 was approaching and Bob got the script. Lo and behold, he and Emily have a kid. So Bob told the producers the script was very funny and quickly followed with, quote, who's going to play Bob? React to that. A doctor's legacy. Many shows owe a lot to the Bob Newhart Show. He broke the mold, raised the bar, moved the finish line, and showed a whole new way sitcoms could be. And the stars of the industry agree as much. The theme of The Office and Modern Family work so well because Newhart showed us the dry humor of life, that every day has plenty to laugh at, and that reactions could be their own joke. He worked hard to keep the humor relevant, with no time-sensitive topics because, to quote Bob, if we're doing Gerald Ford jokes about him being clumsy, we're gonna look pretty silly when the show's in syndication. Director Judd Apatow connected with the sincere love between Bob and Emily as he grew up in a broken home. Roseanne Barr would sneak down to watch the show. Jimmy Fallon grew up with Newhart and called him everyone's favorite family member. Bob Odenkirk let his comedic style imitate what he saw on this show. And the Fonz himself says that Newhart was an expert at being cool because he was himself. And that's peak comedy. Newhart became one of the first comedic everymen, blending his brand of reactionary stand-up comedy with the television medium.
Well, I know I'm going to sound like a complainer, but maybe this is just a little too close.
Creating something unlike anything we ever saw. To our dismay, no Emmy win came. People who worked with the show say Newhart made it look too easy. Plus, they had to compete with CBS's crowning jewels, MASH, All in the Family, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. But we know in our hearts they deserved a win. Only Plachette was nominated for an acting award, losing both in 77 and 78. First to be Arthur's Maud, and then All in the Family's Gene Stapleton. Tough competition. But after committing 6 seasons to one program, Bob didn't want to tether himself to another show, but he did, giving us Newhart in 1982, which ran for 8 seasons, and of course with that famous tie-in finale, where Newhart turned into one long episode of the Bob Newhart Show, being a dream of Bob Hartley's. It was actually Bob's wife's idea to explain the weird stuff going on and also kind of a pushback to CBS. CBS, when Bob was upset with CBS for constantly changing the show's time slot. Luckily, when the end was here, Suzanne Pleshette was available. But pulling off this ambitious, decade-in-the-making crossover meant keeping it a secret. So they wrote a fake finale for the rest of the cast, and used a different filming stage while Pleshette hid in her dressing room for 6 hours. I mean, what a move. What a series. Dr. Hartley ran a great practice, but sometimes the best medicine is nostalgia, and this sure was therapeutic. Ask any comedy star today, and there's a good chance they were inspired by Bob.
Are you by any chance playing Hi Bob?
No! Truly way ahead of its time. So, what was your favorite moment? Do you have a favorite episode from the Bob Newhart Show? Did you prefer his second 1980s title series better? Get in the comments and let's toast to one of the greatest comedian actors of all time, Mr. Bob Newhart. If you enjoyed our Bob Deep Dive, you're prescribed to hit that thumbs up button for us, just once a day, and subscribe to the channel for more. But from all of us here at Do You Remember, thanks very much for watching.